change. They want me to change, but I ain't changing. Nah, I remain the same.
And you are now tuned into another episode of Intellectually Petty Radio, brought to you in concert with A Beautiful Machine magazine, as well as the mighty Nerd DJs Radio Network. You already know, man. So I got Kasim Rashid coming on the show. He is a little late, so my apologies if you. That's why I started the show a few minutes late. I don't want to just have too much dead air, and I think I did the right thing because right on cue, we have Kasim Rashid, one of the finest human beings to ever grace the solar system. I mean, he has run for office. He is a human rights activist. He is just an overall phenomenal individual and an honor and a privilege to share the same space with. How you doing, man? How's life?
I'm good, brother. That was way too kind of an introduction, but good to share space with you, brother.
Well, I'm trying to get better at it, How's your family?
Blessed, and we're grateful.
And I do appreciate you for stopping by. Okay, so my first question, I think this is an underrated thing that people have not really tapped into as far as Trump, is the orchestrated effort to reshape the judicial system to a conservative outlook in his first term. I think that's what the whole term was about. And all the other stuff was just to hide the fact that he nominated over 200 federal judges.
Mm-hmm.
Fair assessment or no?
Absolutely fair assessment. And it's the only thing I would add to that is that this is actually not a new tactic. This is what has been done throughout American history to preserve a status quo that was discriminatory against anyone non-wealthy white male. And, most folks don't learn this, but Justice Taney, who is the white supremacist Supreme Court Chief Justice during the Dred Scott decision back in 1857, his ruling that Black people are subhuman is really what laid the groundwork for the Civil War, because all legal remedies had been exhausted. And historians agree that that really was kind of the final straw that brought the camel's back and enabled violence. And I think we're seeing a revival of that now with the Supreme Court basically being lockstep for all intents and purposes with Trump. So it doesn't surprise me. Fascism, racism is very unoriginal. It just repeats over and over again because they don't have any new ideas. It's just how do we scare, fearmonger, marginalize, and seize power. And so what we're seeing is not surprising to me. What's surprising to me is that people think this is unprecedented when it's not.
How do we keep letting it happen? And I don't even want to say we, because we aren't doing that. It's pretty much the dominant society that keeps letting shit go over and over and over. It's as if the Democrats and the Republicans are one and the same. They just go about things differently.
Yeah. I think it happens because the root causes of the injustice has never really been acknowledged. This is a country that was built on the genocide of one people and the enslavement and genocide of another people. It was built on land stolen from one people and on people stolen from their land. And, even after the Civil War ended, slavery wasn't abolished. It was just relegated to the prison system.
Facts.
Even after the Civil War ended, reparations weren't paid unless you were a white enslaver in DC who lost your enslaved people and you got reparations for that. Dr. King talked about how formerly enslaved people were told to lift themselves up by their bootstraps. Meanwhile, you had tens of millions of European low-income people who didn't speak, they're talking about English being our national language now, who didn't speak English, didn't have any actual skills, came through and got 270 million acres of free land via the Homestead Act, which, by the way, is not ancient history. It was only abolished in 1987. We both remember 1987. And so when you don't have a true reckoning, there's never been a Truth and Reconciliation Commission here as there was in Germany or as there was in South Africa or as there was in Japan. Never. But until we have that here, it's not going to improve.
I don't think they got it right in South Africa.
No, they didn't. I don't mean to put them up as like a model of progress. But even in their inefficiencies, they had some sort of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Here, we don't even have that. And so if we're agreeing that they don't get it right in South Africa, how much worse is it here that we haven't even done the very basics that they've started to try to do over there?
Although I do believe that South Africa drives a lot of the white fear here. We saw what happened to white, quote unquote, what happened to white people there that, quote unquote, that was their land. And they don't want the same thing, even though white people still control things there.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my life-changing events was when I was 18 years old, and I visited my father in South Africa. This was back in the year 2000, and visited Robben Island, visited where Nelson Mandela was held prison for 27 years. And just seeing Nelson Mandela's prison cell, it's something I think every person should go see, because it's not long enough for you to lay down straight in. And the fact that this man spent 27 years in there it boggles the mind. And it's one of the reasons why I maintain hope that from a moment of that darkness, this man could rise up to be president, through all the trial and turmoil and struggle, some seen, some unseen. It gives me hope of what we can accomplish over here as well.
So you're still optimistic for this country?
Always. And James Baldwin was asked about this too. And he says, I'm angry, but I don't despair, because you can't tell the children that there's no hope. And I can't tell my children, I can't tell any child, black, white, brown, immigrant, undocumented citizen, I can't tell any child that there's no hope. There's always hope, because there's always a new generation coming. There's always that possibility of overcoming injustice. And our country has been in these situations before and has made progress despite that. And what I'm even more hopeful for is that once we emerge from this dark era that we're in, not only do we emerge stronger, but more importantly than that, we emerge by building new systems, by dismantling these systems that are still built on white supremacy and building new systems built on justice and humanity. I believe it. That's what I'm fighting for. If I didn't have hope, then I wouldn't be doing this. I'm not doing this for the money. Being a human rights lawyer, you don't do that for the money. I'm doing it because I have hope for the future, for my children.
At what point did you decide, I want to fight for humanity?
I don't think it was an actual choice, actually. I think I'm among those who's extraordinarily fortunate enough to have the teachers that I've had in my life, to have the parents I've had in my life, to have the family system that I've had in my life, to have the opportunities that I've had in my life. Look, I'm an immigrant. I grew up low income, Section 8, food stamps, and I've been blessed with the greatest teachers that a kid could ask for, a person could ask for. And through those years of struggle, I've been able to learn. I've had the good sense to shut up and listen and learn to people far more knowledgeable than I. And it would be a shame, a disgrace for me to be raised by people who marched in the civil rights movement, who led by example, who sacrificed, who were beaten by law enforcement in the streets in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s.
Really?
And then to not learn from them and not to imbibe their courage. I mean, it would be a shame if I didn't carry on what they taught me.
And so you're talking about your family that experienced all of this.
I'm in part my family back in Pakistan, but in greater part my spiritual family as a Muslim. Remember, Black Americans are the largest demographic of Muslims in this country. Up to a third of the Africans enslaved and brought here were Muslim. And while white Christian nationalists beat them and separated them from their children to force them into Christianity, there's still a strong preponderance of Muslims among Black Americans. Again, the largest demographic of Muslims in America are Black Muslims. And so the mosque that I grew up going to on the south side of Chicago, oldest mosque in the country, Al Sadiq Mosque, it was a mosque that had, it was established in 1921 in Jim Crow America. And there's these beautiful pictures of Black, South Asian, white, Latino, indigenous praying together at a time when racial segregation was mandated. This was a mosque that exemplified racial harmony. And it is the descendants of those Black Muslims in that mosque in the 1920s and 30s who came to their adulthood in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, who, when I immigrated to this country in the 80s, taught me in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And so, we're all connected. And I'm extraordinarily fortunate that I had those teachers guide me on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. And it reflects a lot of who I am today.
Now, I don't know if you saw a video, but there was a young brother who was disappointed, and this was his words, in black people because we did not unilaterally support the guy that did the Super Bowl halftime show.
Bad Bunny.
Yes. Which I actually watched. I actually enjoyed the performance, and it did. It wasn't a hang up as much as I thought it was going to be. That I couldn't understand him verbally because visually I understood where he was going. However, as a black man in this country, my experience has been that the Hispanic community has not always viewed us favorably. How are black people who by and large have always supported every disenfranchised person in this country, we've gotten a little apathetic. Is that us or is it the system?
You're asking me to speak about black people and Latino people, of which I belong to neither group.
The only reason I ask you in particular is because I've watched a lot of your videos, man, and you seem to get it.
Well, look, I want to be deliberate about staying in my lane and what I know. And what I know is that we live in a system where the extraordinarily wealthy, the billionaire class, are doing everything in their power to advance the Southern strategy, to get us to fight each other in culture wars, to get us to harm one another. I know we live in a system where COINTELPRO was designed specifically to infiltrate black and brown civil rights organizations, to break them up, to tear them apart. I know that it was those efforts that led to the assassination of Dr. King, of Malcolm X, of Fred Hampton, and the list goes on and on. And so when I see, because even within the Asian community, there's anti-black racism. And so when I see these things happen, I remember that these are efforts by the colonizer mentality to convince us that there's scarcity out there, to convince us that, my success depends on the failure of my neighbor who's black or Latino or vice versa. And my role as a human rights lawyer, as a human being, is to recognize that injustice, call it out for what it is, and continue to find ways to build bridges of understanding, build bridges of dialogue, to combat the anti-black racism, to combat the anti-immigrant bigotry, and to help folks understand through meaningful action that we really are in this together, and that our enemy is not each other. Our enemy are the extraordinarily wealthy billionaire hoarders who would rather watch the world burn so they can have their third private jet than ensure that children have enough to eat. And so that's kind of where my North Star is. And I don't engage in the culture wars because I think it's a deliberate waste of our time and harmful to all of us. I instead try to find ways to meaningfully build those bridges of understanding because we need more of that.
Oddly, I think this is one of the few times where Trump has assisted in bringing different cultures together.
Well, I think he's exemplifying, farmers, for example, saw a 46% increase in bankruptcies last year. And the last time it was that high was, you guessed it, when Trump was president last time. And so, and those are predominantly white farmers, by the way. So I think people are starting to wake up to it. I'm not waiting on anyone to wake up. I'm going to continue to push forward and do the work that needs to get done. But I don't profess to give Trump credit for anything in this space. He's a fascist, he's divisive, and he's very likely a child sexual predator. And I'd rather than give him credit for anything, I'd rather find ways for us to just continue to build bridges of understanding.
Is there anything that we as a society can do more so that they don't let these Epstein files just disappear, just go away?
Don't let it go away. Don't stop talking about it. Keep raising your voice. Keep talking to your member of Congress, your senator, your state reps. Contact your AG's office. Ask them to file state charges. I mean, there's so much we can do that doesn't cost a penny. It's just going to require the time and investment to do it. And we live in a clickbait culture where we want to have a retweet or a post and an instant gratification, instant dopamine hit. This isn't about that. That's not how we're going to get satisfaction. We get satisfaction by being sustained and consistent and principled and demanding accountability. It's exhausting, but again, this is what it requires. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted 390 days, and even after the bus company said, "Okay, we yield, we'll let black people sit wherever they want," they said, "No, we don't just want to sit wherever we want. We want you to tear down the system of segregation. And it wasn't until the Supreme Court ruled segregation unconstitutional that they began to ride the buses again. That's the sustained type of effort that we need.
What do you think that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are doing wrong?
I think the biggest thing they're doing wrong is staying in office. They should both resign and let somebody with an actual spine take those spots and lead the party.
Is there anybody that's currently in office that you would replace them with?
Yes. In the Senate, I would love to see Christopher Van Hollen of Maryland be the Senate leader for Democrats. This is a man of principle, a man who has led by example, who has been adamant condemning the genocide in Gaza, who has fought for immigrants. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, when he was kidnapped and taken to a torture camp in El Salvador, he went down there, got proof of life, brought him back. He has been unapologetic, speaking out against racism, against AIPAC, against all forms of xenophobia and bigotry, and he's been fearless. And I think he exemplifies what leadership is. I think in the House we have plenty. Pramila Jayapal, I think, is a phenomenal leader. I think Ayanna Pressley, an excellent leader that I'd love to see in the speaker seat. I think AOC, phenomenal. I mean, we have some outstanding leaders. Jamie Raskin, I think, has done a phenomenal job because they lead with conviction. Mark Pocan in Wisconsin is outstanding. There's just so many great examples that we can lean into. Delia Ramirez, I mean, the list just keeps going on and on. There's no shortage of leaders that we can work with. We just got to make sure we make it happen.
You've run for office before, correct?
Yes.
You plan on running again?
I never say never, but no plans right now.
What made you run the first time?
As a human rights lawyer, you get to work as an advocate for marginalized communities. As a policymaker, you get to transform that advocacy into policy. As an advocate, I see as somebody who sees somebody drowning and pulls them out of the river. Policymaker figures out, why the hell are there so many people drowning? Let's go fix the issue so people don't drown in the first place. They don't fall in the river in the first place. And a lot of the work I do as a human rights attorney is after the fact. I mean, sure, there is policy initiatives, and there's prevention, and there's education and whatnot. But a lot of the DV survivors, for example, women who are survivors of domestic and sexual violence, by the time I'm representing them, they've already suffered abuse. And in my view, the actual solution is to prevent the abuse in the first place, where men need to be accountable. So for me, domestic violence is not a women's issue, it's a men's issue. Men need to stop being violent. And so for me, running for office was, I saw things like hunger, and recognize that hunger is a serious issue in this country, and it impacts 1 in 6 people. Now, we can open up all the food banks we want. We can open up, expand SNAP and TANF access, get free lunches. These are all good things. They're all also Band-Aid solutions, because the actual solution is to eliminate poverty. And that requires a policy change. That requires taxing billionaires out of existence. That requires making sure billionaire corporations are taxed at a rate. Amazon shouldn't be paying a 0.1% tax rate. That ensures that every company is paying a living wage to its employees. It ensures, it requires ensuring housing is affordable and not exploited by hedge fund managers. And the list goes on and on. But that's the vision that I had in running for office. Wasn't successful, unfortunately, but that is the motivation of why I ran.
Your family ever come to you and say, quit is too much?
No.
Really?
Never. I'm extraordinarily fortunate that I have an extraordinarily supportive family. My wife, Aisha, is amazing. My kids are great. My parents have both passed in the last few years, but had phenomenal support throughout my life, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for that.
Biggest lesson from your parents?
There's so many. I think the two that stand out the most is one, I mean, we're Muslim, and so this idea of knowing what you believe and why you believe it, and know that you'll be accountable to the Creator, was something that was taught to us at a very early age, that there is an accountability that you need to be cognizant of. There is someone, something, some being greater than you, and you need to be accountable. And the way you are accountable is the second lesson, and that is that you're accountable by being relentless in your service to humanity, your indiscriminate service to all humanity. That there should never be an asterisk on whether you support someone who is suffering or in need. And what that looks like is giving everything you possibly can to the best of your ability. And I remember my father telling me that you will find people who are far more talented than you,
Mhm. Yes.
people who have more resources than you, people who are more eloquent than you, who are smarter than you, who have more money than you, who have more access, more power. You can't control any of those things. But the one thing you can control, that you should never, ever, ever let someone top you, is how hard you work. You control how hard you work at something.
Yeah.
And hard work will beat talent every single time in the long run. And that's something that I've really cherished, because it's something he ingrained in me at a very young age, that no matter what happens, just remember that your hard work, being consistent and directing it towards service to humanity, is what's going to be your saving grace. And he was right. It's been my saving grace. It's what's kept me sane and content and forward thinking.
Now, I don't know how you view success, but I would absolutely look at you as a success through and through.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Do you do you see yourself as successful?
I see myself as, I can look in the mirror honestly and say I'm doing my best. I still feel like there's a lot more I need to do to, I also don't see success as a destination where I can be like, okay, now I've arrived. My view of success, I'll tell you, I can actually quantify when I'll be content, when I'll be happy.
Okay.
When we live in a world where everyone has access to food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, and clothing. When we eliminate poverty and disease and unnecessary suffering and bigotry and xenophobia and all the isms, racism and sexism and all these things, then I'll be happy. Then I'll feel like we're at success. But right now we live in a world where food insecurity is real, hunger is a scourge, racism, bigotry, xenophobia, anti-Semitism are run rampant. And so we have work to do. And so I will celebrate the wins. I'm not fatalistic to say all or none. I will celebrate the wins and the progress, and I will appreciate them and embrace them. But I can't sit here and say I've got some level of success. I'm training for a marathon right now. If I can break 3 hours, I'll call that a success. But then I'll want to go even faster. So.
I can barely get on the treadmill for 30 minutes.
Yeah, but you're also way better looking than most people, so it's fine.
Oh man, I'm gonna cry a little bit. Thank you. So, separation of church and state. From day one here, it's just been kind of some words, if you ask me. However, is it possible or even practical in this country? Should we care
about whether we have separation of religion and state?
Yes.
Yeah, we should care. Why wouldn't we care?
What if it's equitable across the board, like Muslims and Christians alike get to practice, and whatever, there's no discriminatory practices against whatever religion.
Yeah.
Does it matter? Like that you're open about your religion and you just happen to be a senator?
Well, I mean, but I think that's what secular governance enables. That's what separation of religion and state enables. I don't care if someone is an openly practicing Hindu or Jew or Christian or Muslim or atheist. I don't know. You have a practicing atheist, but someone who is openly atheist. That doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is, do they protect absolute justice and equal access to all people of all faiths and no faith? As long as that's the standard, then have at it. Believe in one God, no God, a million gods. I don't care. That's between you and your understanding of creation. But from a very practical, non-faith, but like a very practical perspective, are you fighting to ensure we all have access to food and education and healthcare? Then if you are, then great. Then believe whatever the hell you want privately. Publicly, all human beings should have equal access to human rights.
Are there countries out there that get it? Or which countries would you say come close enough to your utopia?
I think there's examples of countries that are better than others. I think the United States at once upon a time was getting better. I think the election of Bush pushed us into the opposite direction, unfortunately. I think Canada does a fairly decent job. There's no perfect country.
Right.
Malaysia does a decent job. Indonesia does a decent job, but again, there's, Australia I think does a fairly decent job, but there's a lot of work to be done yet. And according to Pew, 3/4 of the world's population lives under some kind of social or governmental oppression of conscience, and so that's 5-6 billion people. So we have our work cut out for us.
That's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people. It's a lot of people.
Like the more I listen, and I'm not the brightest guy on the planet. And I think, for one, I've watched a lot of videos, especially since you were coming on the show. I didn't want to seem like too stupid. So, I'm trying to up my game a little bit, and I'm watching a lot of and I see where there is a disconnect between the very well educated and the tradespeople, like such as myself, in that sometimes the message is delivered so eloquently that a lot of us miss it. Is there someone out there that you feel speaks to a part of us, irrespective of our educational background or socio background, but just hits us in the gut, that you like, that you think is just a good person and a good soul?
Yes, I mean, there's a number of people. Let me step back a little bit though, because I think that's such a profound comment you made right there about the ability to convey a message that reaches the masses without getting into this intellectual battle of who's more intelligent.
Yeah.
The opening verses of chapter 2 of the Quran point to who the Quran is for. And it doesn't say it's for the Muslims. It doesn't say it's for the Christians. It doesn't say it's for the scholars. It says it's for the righteous. It is a guidance for the righteous. Hudal al-muttaqin is the Arabic. And the reason why that's so significant is because the exact point that you just made is what the Islamic view of life is, that the message should not be something that is exclusive to a certain education threshold or a socioeconomic threshold. It should be equally accessible to every person out there, regardless of background. And this is why, for me, matters of faith are less about debating scripture and verse. There's a place for that. But it's more about how are you exemplifying the elevation and uplift of humanity. That's a very simple message. I'm hungry. Can you feed me? I'm naked. Can you clothe me? I'm feeling the elements on my head. Can you give me shelter? Very basic things. Every person, regardless of status, of education status, you could be a PhD or someone who never learned to read or write. As the Prophet Muhammad himself was unlettered, he could not read or write. But that message resonates and connects with every single person. And so for me, I looked in my Muslim community, the head of my Muslim community, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, is a person who I see exemplify that. He has a message that exemplifies this element of service to humanity, of racial harmony, of gender equality, of universal human rights. And it's a message that I think the world needs, not from a theological standpoint, but from a very practical humanitarian uplift standpoint, because that's the only way it should be. I don't think the idea that you need to have scholarship to understand humanity, I think is problematic. Only thing you need to understand humanity is humanity. And if you have that, that should be enough.
So here's a question I ask everybody that comes on the show. Has absolutely nothing to do with the conversation thus far. However, here it goes. You're sitting on a park bench and God sits down next to you and he or she says you can ask them one question. What would it be?
That's a beautiful question. One question, what would it be? You know what? I would probably ask, because this is knowing me, I would probably ask, what is my expiration date in this life?
You're the second person, and I've been asking this question probably a couple of years now.
Yeah.
You're the second person that said that. And
Yeah.
that just creeps me out. I'm sorry.
Really?
I don't think I could live with the pressure. Like
Really?
some people, I could see you like turning things up, like accelerating. You want to get everything. The Tupac phenomenon, basically.
Sure.
Like, because he knew he was going to die early, and that's why he's got 1,000 songs, a gazillion poems, because he wanted to get everything on record as much as he could. I'm the person that's going to spend the rest of my time trying to prevent that last day.
It's inevitable. And so my thing is, it's inevitable. There's no such thing as immortality in this life. And so if I can plan ahead and kind of work around that, that'd be great.
Biggest lesson your children have taught you?
Oh, man. The biggest lesson my children have taught me is that my middle son, when he was learning to walk, every time we stopped or passed a bench, he would stop and just sit on the bench and just soak in the world for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be in a hurry, and nope, he saw a bench, he had to sit and just enjoy the moment. And he would just sit there and just relax and just enjoy the moment. And then after he was done enjoying the moment, he would get up and keep going. And I think that it reminded me, it taught me, because I was a very young lawyer at the time, as like I'm at third, fourth year of legal practice.
Mm-hmm.
Ton of work and kind of in over my head on a lot of stuff. And learning from him, even though he was only 1.5 years, 2 years old, the importance of just stopping and living in the moment and just embracing the moment, no matter how busy you are. It's a beautiful lesson that I've taken with me and continue to take with me.
Your kids are so dope.
They're amazing. They're the best thing I've ever invented.
Well, you don't have grandkids, do you?
Not yet. That's true. That's a good point.
Grandkids are way better.
That's right here. That's right here. I was asking a mentor of mine, what's the difference between the time you became a father to a grandfather? And he goes, exactly that. He goes, becoming a father was phenomenal. Becoming a grandfather was 10 times more phenomenal. So I'm like, okay.
Because you don't have the stress.
Sure.
Yeah. Go paint on the wall. I don't care.
Not my problem.
I can send you home.
That's great. That's great.
Okay. For us people in the back, explain to me what gerrymandering is.
Sure. Gerrymandering is basically a way to cheat elections. So imagine that rather than drawing districts that are evenly spaced or geographically consistent, you draw around districts. And what that means is that you lump together people who, even if they're living in different areas, you lump together people into one district to increase their impact and to decrease the impact of a different demographic. So, for example, let's say one district is 60% female and 40% male.
Okay.
If you were to just draw them, equally, then each district would have 60% women, 40% men, and women would basically have full voting power. What gerrymandering does is that it breaks up the women in a way that they'll get maybe one district. So you take, the majority of women, put them in one district, so they get guaranteed that one district.
Right.
And then the remaining women, you split them up among the 40% men. And so the end result is that whereas in the original fairly drawn districts, women would, control 3 districts, men would control 2. Now you flip it, so women control 1 district, but then men control 4. So even though men are the minority, they control the majority of the districts. That's what gerrymandering is, except it's done based off of race, where like in Texas, for example, Texas is 40% white and 60% Black and Latino. But they've gerrymandered the districts so that white Texans control 73% of the districts, and Black and Latino Texans control only 27% of the districts. So white people have a double impact and Black and Latino have half the impact as they would otherwise.
So is it just that Democrats haven't been aggressive enough in doing their own gerrymandering, or somehow conservatives have cornered the market on it?
They've done a much better job, conservatives have, because they've kind of broken the rules sooner. I mean, and it's grounded in racism and white supremacy, white narcissism. Remember, when George Bush was president, the Voting Rights Act was renewed, which, if we lived in a just country, we wouldn't need to renew voting rights for Black people every 30 years. But it was renewed. And what happened? It expanded voting access to historic levels. And then the scariest thing in the world happened. A Black guy got elected president. And all these white racists said, oh, hell no, we're not going to let that happen again. And so they went to the Supreme Court in the famous case Shelby versus Holder and gutted the Voting Rights Act. And then when the Voting Rights Act came up for renewal, it was the exact same piece of legislation to protect voting rights. And whereas Republicans voted unanimously in 2006 under George Bush, and it was signed into law unanimously, now Republicans unanimously opposed it because they saw that voting rights meant they would have less influence and access. And so rather than change their policies to be more appealing to voters, they decided, let's just exclude voters altogether. And that's where we are right now. And Democrats, in their infinite wisdom, thought that maybe we could just appeal to the hearts of these racists and convince them to not be racist. And obviously that has not worked out very well, famously.
Although I can't say that I give the Democratic Party that much credit. I think that sometimes they enjoy the boogeyman, the perks.
Yeah,
they just can't afford to go out and be the boogeyman.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways they are. Even with the lack of fight in this space, when Biden was president, he could have broken the filibuster, passed the Voting Rights Act, banned gerrymandering, and protected democracy. He didn't, and here's that we are where we are now as a result of that.
And I didn't just as a voter, I didn't like the fact that Kamala Harris didn't have to go through the primaries.
Oh, completely agree. That's been one, and I wrote about this too. In 2008, Hillary was kind of the anointed one, if you recall. And then this skinny Black guy comes out of nowhere, takes the world by storm, and ends up winning the nomination. And that was made possible because, not just because Obama was good, but because there was a robust primary and people got to see these two candidates.
Yeah.
In 2012, obviously, he was a nominee because he was the sitting president. In 2016, not really a primary. Hillary was kind of anointed again. And you can argue that Bernie got a fair shake. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But you only had 4 or 5 people.
They screwed Bernie.
We know they did. In 2020, a better primary, but wasn't a true primary. You had Buttigieg, Klobuchar all drop out and get behind Biden abruptly. That was manufactured. And in 24, no primary. And you see the results. When there was a robust primary, you saw Democrats take the House, the White House, and the Senate. And when there was no primary, you saw Democrats lose all of those things. And that's the point, that a primary allows there to be more voter engagement. So even if my guy didn't win, I felt like I was heard and I'll support the overall nominee.
That part.
But if you're not going to even give my guy a chance, then what the hell do I care what nominee you chose?
Yeah. I didn't like that at all. And I was not alone.
Nope.
Is there a policy or a law that is flying under the radar that you feel should be getting way more press because it's going to be way more damaging than we think moving forward?
Yeah. Right now, the SAVE Act, which is making its way through Congress, it just passed the House. If it passes the Senate, it's going to disenfranchise 70 million women, tribal communities, low-income communities, soldiers deployed abroad, Black and brown communities, and it will be a revival of Jim Crow, racism and voting restrictions in 2026 America. So pay attention, call your senator, tell them to vote no on the SAVE Act, and do not let this thing go to the White House, because if it becomes law, then we will be in perpetual Republican rule forever.
Okay, well, give me, not the whole, map of it, but just the juicy parts. As far as
So
like
the
this is
deceptively named
specifically
SAVE
doing that.
Act, the deceptively named SAVE Act requires additional voter confirmation before someone can vote. And so we already show our voter ID when we
Mhm.
register to vote, and we confirm that yes, my name is Qasim. Here's my driver's license. I am who I say I am. You can look me up in the database and confirm it's me, and then you register to vote.
Mhm.
What the so-called SAVE Act does is that it changes that and says even if you've already confirmed who you are with one form of ID, we're going to now require additional forms of ID when you go to vote. And so even though we already know who you are, you have your ID, you've verified it, that's no longer good enough. Now you need to go spend money and time and get an additional ID. And if you don't, or if you got married and your name changed and you haven't changed your ID yet, guess what? No voting for you. Or if you're in a tribal community and we don't recognize your tribal ID, no voting for you. If you're a soldier deployed overseas and you can't come back here to confirm you are who you say you are, no voting for you. And so all this does in the aggregate is restrict voting access, make it more difficult for women to vote. And remember, women vote blue about 10 points more than they vote red every single election cycle. And so if you want to win an election by cheating, you restrict women from voting so that there's more Republican voters, fewer Democratic voters. And that's what's happening right now.
What is the next hard? Is that Tegna
Yeah.
merger?
Yeah, the Nexstar Tegna merger is a merger that's trying to be pushed through by the FCC and Donald Trump. It would give Nexstar control of 80% of TV households, effectively state media. And once that passes, you can kiss free speech goodbye.
We've already done that though.
Well,
Like the way Trump is running shit has really just nullified free speech. Even the left leaning channels are choking and not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is again why we need to get this fascist out of office.
Yeah, but it's almost what did Fred Hampton say? You take the revolution, but you can't take the revolution. I'm butchering the quote, but basically, Trump is going to leave, but that ideology was before him and will live way beyond him.
Yeah, and that's why when we talk about the next step, it can't just be his removal. It's got to be the dismantling of this white narcissist infrastructure that's enabled him in the first place, and it's going to require building a brand new infrastructure.
If America makes it another 250 years, what do you think it looks like at that point?
I don't think America makes it another 250 years at this rate.
Really?
Yeah, not in this form. It's not sustainable. The level of wealth and income inequality is worse now than after the Great Depression. This level of wealth and income inequality is just not sustainable. It's historically, it has never been sustainable. No empire has survived with this level of wealth and income inequality. I love my country. I love being an American. I'm also a pragmatic and honest person. You cannot survive at this rate. It's just not feasible or practical. There's going to be a breaking point.
So do you think we completely implode or are we invaded?
I don't think we're invaded. No, I think we're too militarily powerful to be invaded. But I think I don't think it's, they say fascism comes slowly and then all at once. So I don't think it's like a, one day, suddenly the American flag comes down and the Nazi flag goes back up. And that's, like out of a, Marvel comic book where Hydra is now taking over. I don't think it's going to happen that way. I think it's just going to be what we're seeing, these incremental stripping away of our rights, right? Voting rights being stripped away, climate justice being decimated, healthcare access being denied, food insecurity increasing. All these things kind of in the aggregate are what's going to lead to a breaking point or a lack of unification in so many words.
Yeah, we're screwed basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see there being a civil war at this rate as well. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me either with the way he's denying people's rights and basic access.
And what the parallels between, and I know they don't want they hate when you call them Nazis, but the parallels between Nazi Germany, especially early on and now, I mean, to the point where even early on in Nazi Germany, you had a segment of the Jewish community that supported Hitler.
Well, what's interesting is we keep making the comparison to, I mean, I don't know about that reference. I'd have to look that up. But we keep making the comparison to Trump is acting like Hitler in Nazi Germany. And there's two things I want to say about that. One, to my knowledge, the only elected official that's compared Trump to Hitler is J.D. Vance. So they know. And two, we have to remember, this is a great book written by Professor James Q. Whitman of Princeton University called Hitler's American Model, where Hitler sent his lawyers to Jim Crow America to study America's miscegenation laws because he wanted to apply them to the Jewish people of Germany. And he was just enthralled and fascinated with the reservations of indigenous people, where they forced indigenous people onto reservations, with the Jim Crow style segregation laws and the bans on interracial marriage. And what's really remarkable is that Hitler's lawyers went back to him and said, yeah, this is what's happening in America. They're doing what we want to do, but just, let's be careful because these guys are way too extreme. And so in reality, the Nazis said to Hitler, hey, we may be Nazis, but we are not Americans. Like, we will not go that far. And that's what's crazy about it, that Hitler, in significant part or in not insignificant part, built what he built based off of American Jim Crow. And so when we say that Trump is acting like, Hitler, he's actually acting like America. And that's the problem. That's fundamentally the problem of why we're here, because we never really reconciled the injustice of that time.
Okay, so you're tomorrow you wake up and I have given you carte blanche authority over American reconciliation to the Native Americans and the African American people of this country, and or anybody else you feel needs to be reconciled with. How does that look for you?
I mean, land back, reparations, and a revamping of our entire economic system, so that necessities, food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, clothing, cannot be exploited, and innovation is rewarded. I think that if you invent a widget that makes you wealthy, by all means, enjoy your wealth. Where I draw the line is when you are exploiting things people need. When insulin, which was discovered and the patent sold for $3, specifically so it would not be exploited, when that insulin is now being sold at $14,000 a year, when it costs $70 a year to make, I would have a problem with that. And so I think land back, reparations, and then an economic model where we guarantee human rights and we foster and facilitate innovation. So for those who do work hard for industry, for commerce, reap the fruits of their labor.
Gavin Newsom, you think you'd be a good president?
No.
Damn, that was quick. Like, what is it about that guy that is that quick?
He is, he's a number of things, right? I mean, he's a genocide denier. He whitewashes the genocide in Palestine. Ta-Nehisi Coates said it beautifully, that we keep being asked if Democrats are going to save democracy. And I would submit to you that if they could not stop a genocide, how do you think they're going to stop fascism in this country? The fact he's a genocide denier is deeply problematic. The fact that he has continued to take corporate money and dark PAC money and APAC money is deeply problematic. It shows that he's not really aligned with the will of the people. And I can go on, but these are just a couple of examples of his deeply, the fact that he platforms people like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and doesn't push back against the massive disinformation that they put out there is deeply problematic.
Is he this generation's Bill Clinton?
I don't know. It's a good question. I haven't thought about that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. I haven't given that enough thought.
I think from just a charisma standpoint, they really favor.
Yeah, I mean, look, someone who can speak eloquently. There's a million of those people in politics. It's not the speaking the eloquent part that matters to me. Is there substance to what you're saying?
Yeah.
And is there substance to what you're doing? That's really what I'm focused on.
Yeah, but from an electability standpoint, I think he has captured, for good or bad, he has captured the same thing that Trump captured from a social media standpoint, the ability to perfectly capture the pettiness of people.
Yeah, I mean, again, that to me is not. I mean, he admitted in a podcast that he doesn't know what his social media team is doing, and so, he's the biggest opponent of his own social media. He's the guy in social media and the guy in real life are two very different people. And I think this is why we need primaries, because in a primary he's going to be scrutinized and put under a microscope, and people are going to see all the issues that he brings to the table.
Trump nominated, I think he's got 3 people on the Supreme Court. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
How important is that? And will we see that again in another president, do you think?
I hope so, because I hope that when if we do have elections in 26 and 28 and Democrats do take the House, the White House, and the Senate, I hope that they sprint to expand the Supreme Court to 13 to 15. Put 9 progressives on the Supreme Court, people who are left of Ketanji Brown Jackson, and undo all the harms done by this current right-wing, racist, fascist Supreme Court.
So if they increase it from 13 to 15, like what's to stop the next wave of conservatism from increasing it to 18 to 21?
Let them. I mean, that's my whole point. Let them. Like we can't shoot ourselves in the foot because of what they might do. Okay. What I know will happen is we will be able to restore Roe. We'll be able to overturn Citizens United, get corporate money out of politics. We'll be able to pass voting rights and expand voting access in a meaningful way. We'll be able to tax billionaires and make sure that billionaires and billion-dollar corporations are paying their fair share of taxes. We'll be able to fund public education. We'll be able to get universal health care. We'll be able to ensure that the minimum wage is also a living wage. We'll be able to protect voting rights and get rid of gerrymandering. I mean, there's so much that we'll be able to do to improve people's lives. Pass universal child care, cancel student debt, cancel medical debt. These are all basic human rights things that need to be accomplished. And my bet, my conviction is that we do these things and improve people's lives. They will see very clearly, oh, this actually is a better way. We are giving people something to fight for, and they are going to show up for us. This is what Zoran Mamdani did. If you told me a Ugandan South Asian immigrant named Zoran Mamdani is going to be the mayor of New York City a year ago, I would have said you're out of your mind. But this is a man who ran with his convictions on affordability, with integrity, with honesty, got record turnout, kicked Cuomo to the curb in the primary, kicked him and 23 billionaires who supported him to the curb in the general. And in 6 weeks, he's already passed universal child care, won $5 million in restitution for gig economy workers, and won back the licenses for 10,000 former Uber drivers who've been wrongfully kicked out. I mean, this shows what happens if there is willpower in leadership. And so I don't worry about what Republicans might do when they get back in power. I want to focus on what Democrats should do when they are in power to fight for working people. They need to show up, and this is the time to do it.
If people want to get in touch with you, how do they go about doing that?
Pretty easy to find. I'm at Qasim Rashid across all platforms. I have a Substack at QasimRashid.com, QasimRashid.com. Put out daily human rights content on these critical issues that impact you, that corporate media is often ignoring. You can be a paid subscriber for a cup of coffee a month, but it will get you no benefit other than knowing that you're supporting a human rights lawyer, because there is no paywall on any of my content. All of my content is fully accessible. So only be a paid subscriber if, one, you can afford it and it doesn't pinch you, and 2, you want to feel better about yourself for supporting a human rights lawyer who is doing whatever I can to fight fascism.
One more question before I let you go. Yeah. Is there any topic or question that you feel like I should have asked and you're going to be talking about me when we get off this show if I don't bring it up?
No, my brother, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to speak with you. And I'm grateful for the platform and the time.
Oh, it's been an honor, man. Thank you so much. I'm absolutely certain there's nothing I can do for you. However, if for some reason you wake up in a month and you think, oh, let me call him, absolutely, please do, and I got you.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. God bless.
And I can't remember the young lady.
Julia.
Shout out to Julia.
Thank you.
No doubt. You have a phenomenal evening on purpose, man. Appreciate you.
Peace, you, brother. Peace out.
Yo, that's pretty freaking dope. Yeah. every so often I have to really just kind of pinch myself because I have really talked to some of the greater minds of this generation. I've talked to some of the more interesting behind the scene people. I've talked to people in Congress. I've talked to mayors. I've talked to CEOs. I've talked to entertainers. I've talked to people that have won Grammys. I just really been one lucky motherfucker. And sometimes I have to sit back and smell the roses. So shout out to you, and if nobody tells you today, I'm absolutely fucking proud of you. You have a phenomenal evening on purpose. This is Jobs. This has been another episode of Intellectually Petty Radio. I'll see y'all next week. Peace.